Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we tackle the issues and we bring on the experts to share with us what they know to make our business better. Because the better the experience we offer at the dealership, the better the consumer experience, and they will not only buy all of your stuff, but they'll bring all their friends, their coworkers, their families, the people at church, anybody and everybody they know, they will bring to you because you will be, as my friend the laminator, Robert Sebastian says, their most trusted advisor for life. And that's what we try to do. And as Paul Machine said, a rising tide lifts all boats. So by bringing on these experts like this Dean Aufmuth guy to share with us what they do to help dealers become more efficient, more profitable, it helps us all out. And let's face it, this has been a great business for me. I'm sure for Michael and so many of you out there. So let's all pledge to make this the best possible business ever. So Michael, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's actually exciting to be here.
All right, I'm going to play a short clip. And right after that clip, I want you to introduce yourself to the few people that may or may not know you. And then we'll jump right into it.
Sounds good.
We are Elite F&I.
Elite F&I Partners.
If there is one word that comes off of that video, it is energy. And the reason I wanted Michael on the show is because Michael's got that kind of energy, not just on video, but in person. I'm sure you've all seen the videos out there. This guy he's logging the miles. He's kicking down the doors and he's sharing in social media through video tips and hints and what's going on in his life. And these are all exciting things because at some point in time, there's going to be a dealer out there, could be one of you, where your regular guy or gal pisses you off. And Michael's always there, whether he's showing up at the store, whether you're catching him in the feed. This guy's a guy that's getting it done. So, Michael, welcome to the show, man.
I start giggling when you're saying that because you're saying I'm always there. And I almost feel like I should apologize for that. Like I'm always there on people's social media. But no, social media has been good for us. We've used that tool, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever platform it is. We've had a lot of consistency with it where we've used it to get our message out there. And it's you and I were chatting before the show started, but there's a lot of trying to do the right thing and not be the guy that's super annoying on social media, but be the guy that's out there putting your message out. And I feel like I found a way to just share my message as I'm going throughout my day and doing different things that we're running into inside dealerships. But to introduce myself, I'm Michael Aufmuth, Elite F&I Partners. So my wife and I started our agency about 9 years ago now. So back in 2013. And have grown to the point now where we're in multiple states. Last year, we hit a milestone at the beginning of at the end and the beginning of the year where we crossed 100 dealership partners. Thank you. And this year, we're actually climbing even beyond that and doing very well. We have a lot of things going in our favor. We work with automotive, power sports, RV, marine dealers. We put a large emphasis on technology and putting in integration and different tools that are going to make the process streamlined and work really well for our dealer partners. But the biggest thing is, like, everybody, including myself, including my wife, including the guys on our team, is we're all car guys. We're all people that have been in this business. We've all sat in the box. We've all like rolled our sleeves up and done this job for a number of years. So we can come in and go side by side with the people that we're working with and show them exactly what to do. And so that's worked really well for us.
You speak the language and you have the experience. I mean, that's a big plus.
Right.
Because a lot of times people come into our business that don't understand it, and they're trying to teach the dealer how to do something that they haven't themselves done, but you've done it. So you've run into the problems.
Right. Exactly.
So the whole sales model has changed.
Okay.
Right. It used to be that people would come in and you sell them stuff. Now that's not the case. You know, you talk a lot about presenting, not selling. And before we go any further, let me just acknowledge a couple of people here, because, you know, I hate those shows where people comment and you never get responded to. I've watched some of those shows where I take the time to comment, and then the guy or gal never responds. So starting at the top, Ed Shipolowski, hello and good evening to all. Ed has been an awesome supporter. He turned me on to a guy that I had a conversation with the other day that is going to be a blockbuster. So get ready for that. We haven't announced that date yet. Andy Papenhagen, SDL brother. Happy Sunday, everyone. And Robert Allen Carvel. Good evening from Hotlanta, Georgia.
I'll be out there tomorrow.
You'll be out there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Timothy Wilson. Good evening, Paul and Michael, and all from deep in the heart of Texas. Ty Thompson, Cars on the Move. Love that guy. Says, hi, Paul. Russell B. Hill, good evening, everyone. And Mike Vogel, hashtag the coach. Good evening, Paul and Michael. Creating customer advocates is what counts. And we have Brigham Charles Sears, Sacramento, California. Brigham Sears saying hello to Paul and Michael. And also from the West Coast, Michael Weldon. Solid. Hello, man. Or no, hello all. No, when he said solid, anybody remember the Mod Squad way back in the day? Probably before your time. We were talking about that old thing. The Mod Squad was two guys and a woman. They were undercover cops. And Link used to always say, solid, man. So when Michael said solid, hello all, I immediately went back to solid, man.
Well, I got several friends that use the word too, so I'm used to that.
Shelly Trommer, wow, she's never tuned in. One of my old friends from Subaru in Milford. We got Greg Dudley says, hi all. Mike Vogel says, walking the walk is so important and builds instant credibility. Absolutely. Jerry Davis, another SDL brother, says, good evening, everyone. And Kenny D. Kenny D is the nicest person on LinkedIn. It says, Paul Meijer, savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you, sir, from Sugar Land, Texas, just south of Houston. And Brigham Charles Sears says, yes, he remembers the show. And Greg Dudley, Mod Squad, and Room 222. Yes, I think that was with Karen Valentine, but yeah, we're all old. Shelly says, Johnny says hi. Oh, my God. The Johnny she's talking about has some of the funniest stories. I'll share them one day, but not today. Like hysterical stories. I tell them all the time. Joshua Taylor. Hello, Paul and Michael and Steve Chesson. Solid, man. All right. So we talk about the sales models changed. We used to sell people stuff. Now we talk about presenting. And you do a lot with creating training models that have been kind of around forever, right? You dusted them off, broke them, and rebuilt them into something new. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So ultimately, when I first became an agent, I worked for a company called F&I Solutions Group, and we used a certain process. Like we would go into every single dealership and follow, the exact same process in every single store. And it's not that the process was horrible or bad, but I feel like things have evolved. I feel like dealerships have changed. And I can give you an example. So we have a dealership in Michigan, and I was going in and meeting the dealer for the first time. And he's telling me right off the bat, he goes, we don't sell products. And so I was like, well, do you want to start? Because I guess I didn't understand him at first. He goes, no, we don't sell. We don't hard sell anybody. We only present products. And it really resonated with me. Like when he said that, I was like, wow, that really makes a lot of sense. So he and I got to talking. Ultimately, we started doing business, and we started really evolving like what our training looked like around what he wanted. And since that point in time, we've actually changed a lot of our training around exactly what happened inside that store. And so, having an outline or a process that you follow is not a bad thing. Okay. It's not a bad thing to say, I want to do a certain, thing that transitions into a menu presentation, or I want to do certain steps that work. But to do that in a way that is, again, giving a customer answers for what they may need, giving them information for something that may be very relevant for what their situation is. Right. And there's a lot of things moving here, right? We have a customer that we need to get to know. We need to understand them. We have to build credibility and rapport, but most of all, we have to build trust, right? So the most important part of any of this is, like, if I sit down with a customer and I have no trust, I'm dead in the water. It doesn't matter how good my presentation is. It doesn't matter how much information I can tell them about the products I'm selling. They don't trust me. They're not going to buy anything from me.
Right.
And so the biggest thing for me is to get to know that customer and start to build trust. That then creates relevance. And then I can go in and actually talk about how I'm going to solve their need, how I'm going to answer the questions for what they need. And so that's really a lot of the direction that we follow now when we work with any of our dealer partners. We have a systematic approach of things that we like to do, but it's all based on, again, getting to know our customer, getting to build some relevance, getting to make sure they understand who we are and trust that we're going to give them something that's a solution that they may not need right this moment, but maybe need down the road. Because, the reality of it is I'll have a new finance person, new business manager sitting across from me. And I'll literally take a piece of paper, I'll draw a line in it, and I'll put two numbers. Here's $350 a month. Here's $400. Which one do you want? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I go, no, seriously, which one would you want on your car? And they always go $350. I go, right. We sell paper. So if you don't put any value behind that, if you don't establish why they need to go to 400 and what that means, like what it's going to save for them, what it's going to do for them down the road, they're always going to pick the lower payment every single time. So, as simple as that may be, but it helps people understand what you're trying to do.
And the F&I process is an interesting one because in reality, you've got 45 minutes with the customer in the box?
Sometimes less. And honestly, sometimes more. That's, I've seen people talking about that. Like, I've seen different trainers that have come out and say now they've got a 15-minute delivery. And I think that's crazy. I get that we have high volume stores that have to get customers in and out of the office. I understand the importance of that. But the moment we treat them like they're just a number, we are so, in essence, hurting that dealership and their reputation and what that experience looks like for that customer. Like, we used to train in time every one of our finance managers, and we'd have like parameters that we wanted to get them around. I don't pay attention to that at all anymore. I really don't care if it takes you 20 minutes, an hour. It doesn't matter. The experience for that customer is what most matters to me. If that customer walks in your office and leaves smiling, happy, excited, telling their friends about the experience, telling everybody what they just went through, that is so invaluable. And especially nowadays with social media, with what we're doing, Paul, they're out there telling everybody. Right. And if they have the complete opposite experience, they get rushed and they feel like they're getting sold something and they feel like no one was listening. Everything was expensive and their payment just went up $150. They're not going to come back. They're not going to send people to you. It's such a counterproductive thing that happens when you rush that experience. So it's got to be tailored around the customer. It's got to be something that isn't always going to be a set number, to 45 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is that people are trying to do. I think that's a backwards approach, and there's guys out there that sell products. That's all they do. There's guys out there that sell products and do training. And if you roll your sleeves up and you sit across from a customer, one experience is never going to be the same as the next. Right. You're not going to have two customers that are going to be exactly in that 45-minute window. It just doesn't exist. So to sit there and pretend like you're going to have the same number every time, it's not realistic. Now, dealerships have given me the argument where, it takes too long. My finance guy's too slow. And my first, response is, what's happening? Is the customer coming out happy? Are they getting the job done? Are things getting done well? Are you guys selling products? Is there, good gross profit? Because profit's not a bad word. If we do what we do correctly, profit is a good thing, right? But the reality is, if they're doing their job effectively, I really don't care how long it takes. Set expectations that are realistic for the customer behind them, right? So if somebody's waiting, go out and talk to them, introduce yourself, start explaining what's going to happen. Tell them, hey, I'm going to be 15, 20 minutes still. I want to make sure these guys get everything wrapped up, buttoned up the way it needs to be. You are absolutely my next priority. But before you come in here, I want to make sure that you understand exactly what we're up against and the time frame it's going to take. So they're not sitting there, getting wound up or, excited, because let's be realistic. Once they committed to buying the car, time's against us. In the finance office, customers are dying to get the hell out of the dealership. They want nothing to do with us. They just want to sign and get going. So the longer I make them wait, especially without talking to them and setting realistic expectations, I go backwards. So as long as you're communicating, that flows very well. And the time again doesn't really matter to me as much.
I had a couple of great things I want to add to that. Let me just get to a couple of comments here. Mike Fisher. Hi, Michael, fellow AZ Automotive peeps. Robert Gutierrez. Good evening, all. And Kennedy says, know, like, and trust. Savor the flavor of the awesomeness in that, baby. Kelly Traumer says, you all enjoy. And Joshua Taylor, the customer experience is more important than the time it takes, as long as the process is being followed by the team member.
Exactly.
Bingo. Let me put that up there. Mike Vogel, if F&I is backed up, it sounds like a staffing / scheduling issue, just like you can have on the service drive.
Exactly.
And Mike Fisher says, present the menu 100% of the time. What I wanted to add in, and you brought up some great points here. Probably the biggest downfall in anything life-related is communication. That's the biggest problem of all.
I agree.
Because we as mammals don't communicate well on average. But coming out and introducing yourself to the customer and letting them know what the next steps are going to be. It's always the fear of the unknown. When you were a little kid, remember the first time you got on a roller coaster? If you've ever been to Walt Disney World, Space Mountain, I remember the first time I got on it, it scared the crap out of me. Why? Because I'm going into a dark tunnel. I'm just tall enough for the gauge thing so I can get on the ride. And I don't know what's coming next. So I'm scared shitless. No different than a customer. The customer's just spent a boatload of money. They've made a commitment on a boatload of money. You coming out, and the time is another thing we'll get to in a second. But as far as they're concerned, they have a short amount of time.
Right.
So for you to come out at the desk, make that introduction when they're already comfortable, because they're comfortable there. They've been there for a period of time. They've exchanged information with and built rapport with the salesperson. So they're comfortable there enough to make a buying decision. So now you enter their comfortable space and you let them know they're a priority and what you've got going on and what the lineup is for them to come in. So right off the bat, I'm going to guess conservatively, you just bought yourself 15 to 20 minutes worth of time in just that short visit right there.
You did. And you build credibility. You build credibility right away because you're setting a professionalism to the customer that they're important. Like they realize now that they're important enough for you to go out and communicate with them.
Yes.
My wife and I bought a Toyota Camry, I don't know, about a year back. And I have a buddy that works at a Toyota dealership in Phoenix. I go in, and unfortunately, every time I purchase a car, he goes to the finance team and tells them what I do for a living. So I always get like this really unpure, delivery process. They want to filter it for me, like give me, like either a quick version or something that it's just not very impressive. But anyway, my son and I are going into the office, and my son was like shocked by how bad it was. He asked me, "Do you want products?" No, and then just basically scrapped it and walked away from offering me products. And I was like, "Did I miss
what was that?"
Right? Like, what just happened here? But like, it was funny because we talk about like how, you want to come off professional and how you want to set the stage. He came out right away and was so professional. He was talking to me and telling me what time expectations were. He's going to get my paperwork started, get everything rolling for me. And I'm like, okay, I like this guy so far. He's doing a good job. And then as soon as like the salesperson went up and talked to him about who I was, he completely fell off, right? He gave him the heads up. This is not a guy you want to sell warranties to, which is not the truth. I'm the guy that buys a lot of stuff. I really am. But I just want somebody to tell me and build value in it, right? I want you to tell me why it's going to make sense for me and then give me a fair deal. Other than that, I'm an easy sale. I really am. Like, I feel like I'm the guy that'll sit down and buy a lot of your products. Just give me a real presentation. And then if you don't mind, let's talk about it. It's what I do. It's what I'd love to talk to you. And so anyway, but no, he just completely flopped over and didn't sell me anything. And I'll finish the story with another thing that happened. So we buy this Camry, we leave. 2 days later, I get a nail in my tire. Well, tire and wheel would have been a product I would have easily bought. Inexpensive, has all kinds of value. Anyway, I go down to discount, and of course, it's in the sidewall. So I end up having to buy a new tire. So right away, I'm frustrated because, like, it's my own fault for not buying it, but I was frustrated because he didn't engage me enough to try to put value in the products or try to sell me the product. So I'm getting angry with the dealership as I'm going through this experience, right? Like I'm thinking as, okay, if I'm a customer and I went through this, maybe I wanted the guy made me so angry or something happened. Okay, the customer's going to now have a bad taste in their mouth over that experience because for one reason or another they didn't buy that product, right? So anyway, I get a new tire put on my vehicle. Day goes by, 3 days later, no kidding, that same tire gets another piece of metal in it, right?
Oh,
And so,
man.
oh yeah, so literally within the first week of owning this vehicle, I've had to basically replace the tire 2 times now. Right. And so luckily discounts a warranty on the tires. I got it there. So I don't have to pay for one tire. But I'm thinking to myself, these things really happen, right? Like stuff that we're selling, the products that we're out there, showing a customer, we talk about stories sell, right? Like tell a customer something that I went through is so important, right? Especially if I have rapport with the customer. I sit in the office, I guarantee you my tire and wheel penetration is extremely high every time I'm sitting with a customer because I can tell them a real life story that happened to me of buying a car within the last year and 2 times needing to use a product that I didn't get, right? How angry I was that I didn't get it, right? So how important is that, right? And where does that, again, go into building value and everything that stems off of that and having a good experience and having somebody that sets expectations and builds trust right off the beginning.
Yeah, no, I've got another thing I want to add to that, but I want to just not miss any comments here. Gene Girdley, my Fixed Ops brother, support Paul Meijer.
Arizona boy.
Greg Dudley, the transfer of trust from sales to F&I and can be done in an appropriate manner within the process. Mike Fisher, what Paul's talking about is connect with the customer, warm them up before you roll out your presentation. Bingo. And Greg Dudley says the transfer of trust from, oh wait, this printed double for some reason. Ed Chipolowski, on the Brian Kramer interview, he said his dealership is getting rid of printers and going paperless. Does Michael advocate for paperless? We'll get to that in just one second. Kenny D, Paul Meijer, I can never imagine you being less about anything. Russell B. Hill, if they like you, then they learn to trust you and they buy from you. Tim Wilson says, I have a solution. And Mike Vogel says, inconsistent processes are usually the ultimate downfall of any business. Now, the second part that I wanted to get to was, on average, you can figure you've got about 45 minutes with the customer in the box. But as we said, with the right processes in mind, you just bought yourself 15 to 20 minutes by just doing that laying out of what's going to happen at their comfort zone at the salesman's desk. So that's number one. Number two, it's funny how many times I've gone into what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting that went an hour and a half. Now, why do you suppose that is? Because I talk a lot? No, because the information was relevant to the prospect. Just like if you start off on the right foot, they say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. If you start off on the right foot with the customer before they come into the box, then you've already set the stage. So now they're going to be more receptive to what you have to say. Right. So you're not tied necessarily to that time. Now, if you do your job properly, or however the store is set up, whether they're set up for the customer to do the interview, if there's a questionnaire they do ahead of time. I mean, let's face it, you got what, 8, 10 products? Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to stay awake for all of them. Right? So if I know through the proper interview which of the 10 products are your hot products that you would see value in, now, would it make more sense for me to present that towards the beginning or make those items 7, 8, 9, and 10?
You're asking my opinion on this, correct? I mean, like if I would do, okay, so this is a conversation I've had several times. I've always been the guy that's the 300% rule, 100% of products, 100% of customers, 100% of the time. Yeah. As our training has evolved a little bit into more of a personalized approach and getting to really have trust with the customer. Yeah. The argument has been made to be not putting in products every time.
No, I'm not. Hold on. I'm not saying not to present them all. What I'm saying is the order in which you present them. If I present every time items 1 through 10, and this particular customer sees would get value from items 7, 8, and 9, they may check out by the time I get to 6.
I got you. So you're changing the order in which they're actually displayed.
Still 100% presentation every time.
I wouldn't try my guys to do it that way. And the reason is that I want people to go through the same pattern every time. Now, part of what I'm trying to get a finance business manager to do in part of our process is engagement. So I have certain parts of that presentation that keeps the customer engaged.
Yeah.
They have to have a conversation, and it's not just me, talking or, as I would say, sometimes diarrhea of the mouth, for 30 minutes where somebody's completely tuned out and their eyes are rolled back in their head. I don't want that any more than the next guy. Right. So in my eyes, like I have certain breakpoints where I get to certain products where I have a customer have to explain the product to me. Right. Like I want them engaged in the conversation so that way I know they're listening. Right. And also the virtue of how I'm doing it every time I have a little bit of logic in my presentation, I don't want them changing it because then it gets out of a pattern. Right. And so the pattern is very important to me because by doing the same steps every time, we become very polished at it. We know and anticipate questions that are going to be coming and things that are going to come up, and especially with me, part of my training, when I go in and I work with the finance guys, at the very beginning of signing a new store, they hate me. They just do because I'm sitting across from them. I'm the customer. I'm that guy that is an absolute asshole. And I'm drilling them on every single objection, everything that can come up. I'm pushing a menu back on them. I'm trying to get them to react. I want to see how they handle these scenarios so we can talk about it and then improve on it, right? You're never going to be able to satisfy every customer. I get that. I understand that. But if you are a little bit more prepared for each one of them, okay? I'm always that guy. And I literally last week had somebody tell me, you're never happy. You're never happy with what I do. And that's not true. I always just want a little bit more. That's all I want. It's the truth. Like we had in our group today, I don't know if you're a part of F&I Nation or not, but like different questions come up. And so somebody asked today, what do you consider an elite level PVR and penetration in numbers? And to me, it's not a set number. That number varies depending on the type of manufacturer, whether it's cash, lease, or finance. There's all these variables that
a lot of variables,
and we can dissect that a lot of different ways. But to me, it's about where am I starting at? What's my base, right? Like if you're in there and you're at 300 a copy, you are so far, like I got a lot of work to do with you. But if you're 1,500 or 2,000, whatever the number is, okay, I just want you at 2,100. Right? We're going to aim to get you $100 more. Let's dive into this and figure it out. A lot of people sometimes think I'm like, oh my God, you're reaching so much for so much gross profit. Because like I got guys that hit 3,000 a copy, right? Nowadays it's a normal number to see. You have where it seems like with what's happened in the last year or so with the automotive industry, numbers have gone up.
Is 2,000 the number now, or did it go up from there?
It's between 2 and 3 guys. I mean, like and depending on the store and things that you're seeing, but like the number changes. I think right now it's not. I don't mean this against people in a negative way. It's not because we're more talented. Okay, right. It's just the expectation.
The economy.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to watch the pendulum shift again, where people aren't going to be just happy to get a car. They're not going to be happy that one came in inventory and I plucked that one and I was going to buy whatever you throw at me. That day is going to shift.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have to be masters at our craft and be able to explain the value of all these products again and build the value in what we're selling. So I'm trying to be ready for that. Like right now, it's all of us are eating well. All of us are doing a great job. All of us are making a lot of money. But the reality of it is I'm ready and I know it's coming. It's going to start to shift that direction.
Right. Want to get to a couple of comments. Eric, my SDL brother. Good evening, gentlemen. A little late, but couldn't miss out on Paul Meijer. Ready to learn. Thank you, Eric. Great SDL this morning. Russell Hill, great stuff tonight. Thank you. And Greg Dudley, good CNA at the start of the sales process is a perfect tool to target the prospect for additional products and in F&I that are relevant to the prospect and their vehicle purchase. So absolutely. So my comment was not necessarily to eliminate stuff, more to tailor the production, the conversation to the things that show more value to a particular customer. But I'm like you, I'm all about showing them the value, right? That the thing with the tire, man, that happens more often than you would think.
Right.
And the people come in trained that, hey, that guy's going to try to sell you something. Just go in there, tell him you're in a hurry, you want to get out of there. But guess what? You haven't done the customer the dealer or yourself any justice by just pushing them out, like what that guy did to you. You want to buy anything? No? Okay, here, sign here, there, and there.
Exactly.
That's a bad way to do it, because they're not going to remember that they didn't want to spend the money. It's not about necessarily spending the money. It's about getting the value from what they're spending. If you can relay the story like you did with the 2 tires, I mean, that's huge. And take another scenario. How many cars today have 19-inch tires on them? What's something like that cost when you whack a pothole? You think that person's going to be too happy with you knowing there was a protection plan available that you didn't really go into,
right,
other than a couple of words and have them sign off on the compliance thing?
Yeah. And then stores don't even, I'll teach this time too, they don't even have to be yours as long as it's real, I feel. Right. And so I have a gentleman that works with me now, and prior to that, he was one of my finance guys that I worked with in training.
Oh, I just lost you. I think you're
iron wheel policy.
Hold on, Mike. Your video is buffering. Is there a setting that you can do on your Wi-Fi, or do you want to jump out of the studio and then jump back in?
I can jump out if that helps.
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay.
Every once in a while, there are signal issues, and I found that if you jump out of the studio and come back in, a lot of times that alleviates it. It's kind of like the computer. When something screws up, you just reboot it, and then everything seems to work fine. So let's give that a second.
Back?
No, you're still buffering. No, I mean, like, jump out of the studio completely and then come back in,
okay,
and see if that does it. All right, so let's give them a second here. F&I, one of my favorite topics, because it's an area that's always been an important profit center for the dealership. And too often that whole process gets short-circuited because people come in like this. They don't want to hear anything. They just want to get in, sign, and go. Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. There's
Still no?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a little bit better than it was before, but you're still buffering a little bit. But I'll help you after the show on the buffering piece of it, because I used to experience similar things when I did one of our other shows, and I have resolved all of those issues. I'm going to help you resolve yours as well. So it's a kind of a couple of different perspectives on that process, but I think we see pretty much eye to eye on maximizing the benefit to the customer, building the trust, which then turns into good stuff for the dealership. Now, another thing is creating awareness around products and using things like QR codes and videos. Now, for a while, the QR codes were out there for a while, and then we thought they went away, and then lo and behold, they're back.
And then all of a sudden they made their way back, right?
Yeah. So QR codes, videos. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So we took a little different approach with the QR code. So we use it in 2 ways, and primarily we actually been using it more in the finance office than in the service drive. The service drive we have where we can take a QR code and tie the contracts that are sold to a customer to that QR code. So when they go into your store, another dealership, wherever the case is, those contracts can be pulled up with the contact information to keep everything moving along very efficiently. Now, on the side for the finance office, what we've started to do is replace brochures with a placard that goes on the desk that has a QR code on it. And on that, we've kind of mirrored our process. So what I do is I tell guys, my fear was I didn't want a finance person or a business manager to be using that in place of doing their job. I don't want them to use a QR code as like a crutch, but I want the QR code to strengthen what their presentation looks like. So if I have a customer that's waiting 15, 20 minutes to come into the office, I can get started on some product knowledge and have a video that's built for that dealership tied to their logo, their animation, and then educate the customer on what the products do. And then as you saw in the videos that we've done, we try to keep high energy so it's not a very stale approach for the customer. So it's not something they're going to tune out. And then we do that in a systematic approach where it may be one about needs awareness, talking about where and when they would need a product. And then each product that maybe answers that, we have simple videos for them to watch based on what they are. And they can pick and choose. So they say, hey, I want to see what it is on a service contract, but I don't want to see what it is on a gap contract, or whatever the case is. But again, I'm putting the information in front of them. So that way, when they come in, sometimes what ends up happening is the customer is now not being educated on what the product is. They're asking and forcing questions about what that product can do. So you're starting a little bit further down the road. Again, that is mirroring the approach of the finance manager or business manager, so that they basically are starting at a different point. They're getting a little bit more information in front of the customer a little bit quicker. And so you're able to spend the time you need with the customer you have in front of you, and also start the process with the customer that's waiting to come in, and use that tool technology on their own phone, right? Or something that they're comfortable with, and that it keeps everything moving. And then we take the QR codes, and we have the videos. We actually have where they can have digital brochures. And then we also put in there a link for them to leave reviews for the dealership. So a lot of times we're trying to get a customer to leave a review about what happened, what was your experience like. And then we try to tell them to go back and go on Google and write a review about us, and it gets lost because they can't get to it, or we made too much of a muddy process for them to get there. And so now, before they even leave, I can have them literally click a button right on that same page, and it pulls up the stars. They click how many stars their experience was, write something about it, and we have a review from that customer before they even got in, the vehicle to leave, hypothetically. Or we can at least leave it there with them on their phone, so they can get to it very quickly. That process, like the products and the different things that we're putting in front of the customer, is mirrored on the dealer's website. So or I should say, I go into a lot of dealers where if I have them pull up their website, there is no content, there is no information about the products they're selling, the things that they're offering, what their process looks like inside the finance office. So I try to make it so it's available on the website and it's available inside the dealership. So that way a customer could see that information before they come in. And again, they're educating themselves on the products that you're going to offer. So again, the questions that you're getting now are starting at a different point. You're not having to educate them that you offer these products and what the products do. They know what they are, they know what they do, and now they're asking you questions in regards to that. And it creates a little different experience.
And the great thing is that it's a third-party endorsement that's educational. So the customer can see real-world events unfolding, like, wow, that happened to me.
Right.
So that's what that's about. So you're right. When they come in, now they're more invested in that process. And each step along the way, you're buying time, right? Time is a precious commodity.
Right.
People don't really care what they spend if you can give them time. And I'm going to play a short clip here. I had a conversation with a young lady one time about, how long things take at as it relates to car repairs and things like that. And this is what she had to say. This is really cool.
Okay.
There's nothing in automotive that doesn't take a long time at all.
That's actually not true. I just had an experience where I was at a quick lube oil change, and it only took me 15 minutes. I didn't even have to get out of my car. So I spent a little extra money for the convenience factor, and I would do it time and time again.
Now, did you catch what she said at the end? I paid a little extra money for the convenience factor, but I would do it time and time again.
Right.
So when you make
telling
it,
you right there, and she's telling you what a lot of customers maybe don't tell you, but feel their time is valuable, right?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, if you're catering to their time, you're always going to win. It doesn't necessarily, and then the thing I think is that it doesn't have to be a fast process. It needs to be efficient, right? We need to make sure that we're answering the questions and we're doing everything we need to do to make that experience a great one, right? And if it takes 20 minutes, if it takes an hour, again, I'm not the trainer that's going to give you any review over that. I don't have anything wrong with that. I don't care if it takes an hour, as long as we're doing the job correctly, right? We're doing a good job. The customer's leaving. They had a good experience. They're bragging to all their friends about how good it was. They're doing a video like that lady right there talking about, hey, I'd do it again. I would do it again. I can tell you time and again, the number of times I've had a conversation with people that go, I have a Ford I want to buy, and there's a Ford dealer within 5 minutes of me. I'll never go there because the experience is awful, and I can't get somebody to help me, and I always waste so much time doing it. I'll go clear across town or to a different city to another dealership because the experience is that much better. And that's what I'm trying to evolve into, is that's all about that customer experience. And, what she's saying, like the more we can put tools online, the more we can cater to a customer online, like maybe it's a remote presentation or, the different things that we're bringing. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when COVID first started happening, we all had this like, oh my God, we got to be ready for this. And now it's every day. Like you have customers that will primarily come to the dealership, but you have a lot of customers that are using online tools and utilizing online tools. Granted, Carvana and, Vroom and some of these companies, I think there's a lot that we can learn good and bad from them. But
absolutely,
the reality of it is customers do like having the convenience factor of being able to buy it from their couch, right? They like the convenience of having information served to them right there and where they're comfortable. Like no different than we go to a salesperson desk where they feel comfortable, right? We're trying to cater to that. And so I think, the more we're ready for that, the more we're going to excel and create that experience, which is what we're after in the end.
And I love the way you put it. It doesn't matter how long it takes. They have a preconceived notion, but we all have preconceived notions based on previous experiences. If we can change that whole experience, then we'll change the conversation. Like I said, I've walked into meetings where you got a hard stop in 30 minutes and 2 hours later, an hour and a half later, we're doing paperwork. Right. Why? Because the conversation was customer centric. It was what they were about that mattered. And they realized that, and they were important. So they wanted to take the time to make sure they understood everything perfectly. This is brilliant stuff. And by having this stuff tie in both in QR code and on the website, now you've got a consistent branding strategy where it's not 4 different things. It's not, you've got one price on cars.com, you've got another price on Auto Trader, and even another price on your website. No, it's none of that. Right. All of the items that you're presenting are presented in a unified way across various different channels so that when somebody engages with your content, whether it be that QR code you've sent to them, or they go on the website afterwards to look up some more stuff, yeah, it's all part of what you've shown them at the dealership. So there are no surprises. I mean, I love this stuff. Remote document signing. Some stuff still needs wet ink, right? Or are more of the manufacturers getting away?
Well, in the states that we're running into, you still have some documents that have to have a signature on them. Like whether it be an odometer statement or a title application or things, they still want that. Now, I feel like we're getting there. It's definitely in the last couple of years gotten much more commonplace is the right way to say it, where you can do most of your transaction, in some cases, all of it, not just electronically, but on, remote in essence. You have something sent to them remotely where they can sign it. So it's sad that it's not there yet, but we still have some holes to fill with some lenders and some things that need to be done there, but it's definitely a lot further than it was. And so, commonplace tools like Route One has developed a strong platform now to get things signed, and it gives us even remote functionality. A lot of the menu programs that we use, like one that I love, Metric, I can send documents and get them signed remotely. There's just a lot of things that are already there. I just would love to see in the next year it all come together, where the stuff like you're saying, where you still need a wet signature, we don't need that. We can get to 100% digital, presentation. Because I think the more we can do it that way, it streamlines that process. It really makes it clean, makes it efficient, and it takes, I'm always about trying to take anything that's an inefficiency out. Like we spend a lot of time, sometimes we'll sign a dealership up and it takes us a month or 2 to even kick off. And it's painful to take that long, but we're all about integration and getting everything tied in. So as much as possible, depending on the DMS and the tools that you're using, everything communicates with us. So if you start in one system, it feeds into ours. You don't have to type it in, you don't have to recreate it. You get all your rates, everything generates, and we try to create this efficiency because that happens more and more times now. I can't tell you the number of times I go into a dealership and like I use this tool for a menu, and I use these 3 websites to get rates, and I have to go back in and type everything into my deal. And it's amazing to me that that's still happening. That dealerships have that inefficiency happening, because think about, we're sitting here talking about time and a customer's time and the experience, and yet we have tools that are working against us when we're doing that. Right. And so, we're all about trying to get all of that talking and communicating, not just for new car dealers, but for used car dealers, because I think that's been something that's been overlooked for a long time. and tying their systems in so that everything generates out of one portal as well. And we're getting there. We have a lot of stuff now in the last year, just even that is taking us to another level. And you'll see, I'll post about it when I do a video. I get all excited that I get something new figured out and working, or a new system added on, but we're constantly working on that. We're constantly trying to improve it. And it's an evolution. This technology is constantly changing. We're trying to stay ahead of it. And we're trying to make sure that it's something that's inside our dealers so they can utilize it.
Now, this brings me back to what Ed Chipolowski was asking before, because I don't want to forget about that. Paperless, right? Where some stores are getting away from paperless completely. So at the end of the conclusion of that transaction, you hand somebody this, and that's got all their paperwork on it. Are you seeing much of that out in the field right now, or are we still a little bit of ways from that?
It's definitely happening like that. Especially when you get into more of the higher volume stores where we're trying to keep everything digital, filing cabinets or tying it to a CDK or whatever application we're using to put that paperwork in it. But you have a lot of cases now where a dealership will do a deal, sign it, and even if it is a wet signature, scan it and then shred the deal. They don't want the paperwork. They want a digital copy of it. And I think that's an efficiency. I think that's great. I think doing something like that makes us more professional in the end, because when that customer calls us 2 years from now, I can access his paperwork in 20 seconds, and I don't have to go try to locate something or figure something. It's all something I can get to very easily. So I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of using anything that streamlines and goes digital instead of like paperwork signatures or electronically getting that process moving along.
Would you say it's a smaller or larger percentage of the dealerships out there that you're seeing that are going to handing people these flash drives at delivery?
It's really small. Most people are still doing actual paperwork. I mean, it's very small as far as the number of dealerships that do it that way.
Okay.
But I do have dealerships I work with that do exactly that. They hand a memory stick to the customer at the end of a delivery. But I think in the last 2 or 3 years, I think everybody's got pushed a lot further along the line than they were. We're going to be seeing more and more of it, happening as the tools become more affordable and readily available. Because I don't know how many there are out there in regards to scanning and doing it that way, but I think that it's definitely something that creates an efficiency. But to answer your question, no, it's not in a lot of stores right now. A lot of stores are still doing physical paper and signing the deal with a pen.
What's funny about that is that I would say probably in about the last 6 years, then it has made some movement, but it doesn't sound like it's made a lot of movement, because we were talking about this about 6 years ago, as far as going more paperless. So that's
honestly, what's moved a lot in the last couple of years, in my opinion, is the ability to go remote. And do, like, whether it be a presentation or do a menu disclosure, a waiver, whatever the case is, I can do all that remote, do it very easily now. But like streamlining the entire process into a remote delivery and things of that nature, it's there, but not a lot of people have adapted to doing something like that.
Yeah, I would imagine the other presentations, that's probably big. That's probably welcomed. I look at it this way. I like the interaction of the people, but there's a lot of customers that would rather just look at it on their own.
Correct.
And then there's a percentage of the F&I professionals that would just as soon send that off to the customer also. I guess it really depends on the person. Kenny D says, Paul,
we need to cater to a customer, whatever that environment is, whether it be in store or at home. So
whatever their preferred method is.
Exactly.
Kenny D says, Paul, check your text. I saw it come through, but I'm going to have to check it later because I use this for something else at the same time. Greg Dudley says, time is money, the customers and ours 100%. And Ed Chipolowski said, metaverse. I think it's happening fast. But as it relates to the paperwork like that, I don't know how fast, I don't know how quickly we're going to respond to that as a dealer body. what's your
Metaverse is
feeling
an
on
interesting
that?
thing. Have you seen Brian Kramer talk about using metaverse inside the dealership and like some of the stuff that he's playing with in that technology? It's very intriguing where that could go. I just feel like we're still so early on into adapting into something like that. It's probably a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road before we see any real, adaption or adoption of a dealership using it. I think there's going to be a couple guys that get out there and try to get in front of it ahead of time, but it's going to be the one-offs where people are going to use it, not going to be the commonplace. But I think it'll shift. I think just like anything, you got to start somewhere, and then we got to build our comfort and figure out where it's going to work. The metaverse it's crazy. I mean, that's going to be.
It's incredible. And the applications are it's mind-blowing where it's going to go. But to your point of how long before everybody jumps on, I go back to my comment of 6-7 years ago. We were talking about this becoming commonplace, and It seems like 6-7 years ago, or 6-7 years later, it still hasn't made the inroads that we thought it was going to make. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes. I want to get to a couple of comments. Greg Dudley says the inefficiencies in the modules that run a dealership are incredible. No joke, man. Steve Apicella, the right technology improves the dealer customer in-person engagement by removing the long-standing pain points before, during, and after the sale.
Right.
That's such a simple concept, yet we tend to make it harder than it is. And Greg Dudley says, how many states have laws restricting digital migration of the paperwork? I don't have the answer to that. Might you have that answer?
I couldn't tell you. No, I don't know each individual state. I know each state handles it differently at this point. So, we're going to have to face that state by state as we go into a dealership. But it's one of those things where it's frustrating because as a finance person, would love to have a 100% digital process, but we're just not there. I mean, it's going to come down to the states approving things to be done though.
Yeah,
I'm sure some states are. I'm sure it's happening, but it's not in certain stores that I'm in.
I think we still have a little bit more on that. And Mike Fisher says, Michael is right. Digital presentation and paperless is what the customer wants. And you can manage that remotely. And Paul is right to keep the personal interaction in the process. Whenever possible, I think that is win-win-win for everybody. Let's see here. Bringing lenders and financial sources for dealers needing additional lending sources. I'm going to lump that together with some of the areas that dealers struggle with, i.e. cash deals and leases.
Okay. So 2 things. I want to go back real quick. Stephen, as you brought his comment up on the screen a second ago, Stephen is going to be one of those guys I'll consider an innovator in our industry. His focus right now in their product with YDE is something that we're going to do business with in the future. Is Stephen looks at the sale process and he'll give you the example of 15 minutes that we have 15 minutes to sell our products and move on. Well, his thought process is, why do we need to stop there? Why does the experience with the customer need to stop in that 15 minutes? And I think he's spot on with that. If we build rapport and trust with our customer, okay, and we do a good job, they don't necessarily have to buy our products right at that point in time, or maybe they're not ready to at that point in time. So with tools like his, we're going to be able to take that sale down the road and be able to market them directly on their cell phone. I think that's ingenious, and I think that's going to be something that a lot of companies, including myself, need to adopt to. That we look at not just the sale at the point in time, but the sale that we can get down the road. And that's pretty awesome. I just wanted to touch on that because I think he's one of those guys I consider an innovator in our space. Come to the next question, or the next point that you're talking about, lenders and bringing value to our dealer partners. We, depending on the type of dealership, have different relationships with different lenders for different platforms. So we go into independent dealerships, and a common thing that we hear a lot of times is they need help with lenders. They need more lending sources, or they need more banks, more ways to get approvals for their customers, better rates, whatever the case may be. And so we've actually partnered with companies now that allow us to bring those lenders directly to our dealer partners. And so we can go into an independent, especially even a newer independent dealership, let's say they've been in business for 6 months, where normally that's something that works against them and bringing them credit unions or Cuddle or different connections that take more time, more capital, things that they're looking for. And now we have the ability to those dealerships, those lenders and those tools. And that works well for us and them, right? So the more they have the ability to sell products, the more they're going to sell my products. And then now they have the ability to grow faster because they can offer financing to customers that makes sense. So we've put a lot of focus into bringing those lenders, not just to franchise or new car stores, but to independents that struggle typically to historically get those lenders. And what was the second part of that? I apologize, I don't remember.
The areas where dealers tend to struggle, particularly new car dealers, cash deals, leases.
So cash deals, leases, in our training, a lot of times, we'll have somebody that does a great job when it comes to a finance customer. They build a groove or a niche where they can do very well with one type of customer, but when it gets to a cash or a lease customer, they struggle, right? And then historically, no matter who it is, you typically see less of a PVR, less of an average on a cash lease deal than you do on a finance deal. So we put a lot of focus into not just trying to work on the training there, but the products that they're offering there. The biggest part is if the finance business manager does not see a customer buying a service contract on a lease because the customer's only got a 2-year lease, I understand that. You're not bringing a lot of value to that customer if you're trying to tell them to buy a 5-year service contract when they're only going to keep the car 2 years if they get it back. So you have to bring a relevant product, right? You have to bring something to the table that of the 7 or 8 items, let's say that are in that column, I need to have 7 or 8 items that are going to make sense for that customer. Okay. Otherwise, the car is stacked against you. If the products are tailored to a finance customer, what are you doing on the lease and the cash customer? What are you offering them that makes sense? So we've put a lot of focus into that. We've made it so that the product lineup that you have for a lease is different than the product lineup you're going to have on a finance or a cash deal. And those products need to bring relevance and value to that, customer, because if they don't, I don't expect you to do better. I don't expect you to have a higher PVR there than you do, in a finance deal. Somebody in our group just recently posted, hey, look what we did on a lease deal, and it had like a $2,800 deal. Great. And I'm not opposed to somebody making money on a lease customer. I think that's great. I think they were so proud that they hit 2,800 because it seems like that's not the norm for them, right? They're not. Maybe they make that kind of average when it comes to a finance deal, but not on a lease customer. And me, I'm the opposite. I look at it like every one of these needs to have an even playing field. A cash customer came in and bought a car with a check. They either got that check from a credit union or a bank or whatever the case is, or they had the money in their account. They see value in protecting their asset. If they just drop $50,000 or whatever it is, build value in your products. Make sure you have products that make sense. I expect you to have the same type of average on those deals as you do in finance. I'm different than a lot of agents. I know a lot of agents look at those and they break them out and it doesn't count against you. I'm not that way. I look at it like, yeah, absolutely, it counts against you. You have the products and the know-it-all and the information to give them value. Why is that customer any different than a finance customer? And so we focus on it a little differently. We just make sure that we give them the products that make sense. We educate them on how to use those products, and away we go.
And it's all in the education, because let's face it, if somebody drops cash on a car, it's nothing to protect that vehicle. If the average car is on the road over 12 years today, it's nothing for them to protect that vehicle for the long term if you have the right conversation. And just to go back to what you were talking about, Steve's product, I mean, it goes even further than that. Not only does it allow you give you the opportunity for another crack at the apple, but here's the even more brilliant part, as far as I'm concerned, the fact that all the stuff that they have purchased is right in that app. So when they go into the service department to get something done, it's no longer I bought something here and I don't know what it covers, and the service advisor looks at them cross-eyed and like, well, don't you know what you bought? And then it becomes a tennis match. Well, don't you know what you sold me? And his app's got all that right there. So
managed to claim and everything right through his app. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Reinventing the F&I life cycle.
Gets back into what Steve is working on, and something we're not there yet, our agency and the relationship where I want to be with YDE, but we're going to be. And so when I talk about reinventing the life cycle, to me, it's where his mind is where we're going to align very well. And that is the sale does not stop when the customer leaves. You know, everything that I've ever known for the last, 9 years that I've done this is train to have a short amount of time with a customer, build value and credibility, sell your products, move on to the next one. Right. And that's kind of like the life cycle of what we've gone through. Well, what he's saying, what makes a ton of sense to me is bring him a tool that makes, touches on a lot of the pain points, but also allows us to continue that life cycle where we can offer products to him down the road. And it might be something you don't even know it, but like they may have a tire blowout on them. And then 2 weeks later, you send them, a push notification that says, hey, we're taking $200 off our tire and wheel product this week. If you're interested, click this button and buy it right in our app. That's ingenious because you don't know what's going to trigger for each individual customer. But if you can market them and things like that, and then bring them real value, you know what I mean? Bring them oil change specials or notifications when they need to come in. That's huge.
And not the $19 oil change special, because we all know those don't exist. There's no point bringing them in to have that additional conversation.
Right. No, I 1,000% agree with that. I love where it's going. I love the idea and the logic behind it. Like when I sat through their presentation, probably like this kid's full of crap, but I was like, I love it. There's nothing about this I don't love. I love what you're showing me because I can tie multiple administrators into it. I can, push out information to my customers, and the way they build it, it's very user friendly, not just on the dealer side, but on the customer side. So, as an agency, like I said, we're going to utilize that. That's going to be huge. I'm going to get that in my dealerships because it's going to create a relationship with them. We'll do a couple things. It'll make the dealership see more value in me as an agent for bringing them a product that creates additional revenue that they didn't have before. Right. And it's, and then it's bringing them additional revenue that they didn't have before. It's a beautiful thing. So, it's one of those things that I think he's onto something with it. So.
Well, this happens every week that we exceed the hour that we've slated, and there's still a whole lot more we never even got to. So I'd like to, you and I look at our schedules and do a follow-up to this because I wanted to get to some of the other points, but an hour seems like a long time, but lately it doesn't seem to be enough.
Well, if I can keep my computer offering, I think that'll help too. So
let's talk about a follow-up to this because there's still a lot of points that we wanted to get to. Tim Wilson says, great show, gentlemen. Thank you, Greg Dudley. Great show. And so we're going to sign off here in just a moment. If you're like me, you always remember what you forgot to ask when you had the opportunity to do so. The great thing about the internet is that it runs 24/7. Michael has been tagged in this post. So any questions you have about anything that we talked about here tonight, please, by all means, just click on his name. If you're not already connected with him, I strongly suggest to do so. You'll get some great content in your feed. I promise you, it'll be stuff you want to watch. It's not the filler stuff that tends to clog up some people's feeds. And then we'll be announcing a follow-up show once we coordinate our schedules. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you see value in what we discussed here tonight, share it with your network because there's got to be somebody out there that may benefit from something that you bring to the table. With that, Michael, thank you very much for being on tonight. Don't leave after I shut off here. Everybody have a safe and successful next week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks for watching.